Rogue Legacy is a hugely unforgiving experience. The sheer level of difficulty present within the game will lead some to give up and never give it a second look, but for those that work past the initial boom of frustration and get to grips with the more intricate aspects of the mechanics in place, will find one of the most rewarding games available on the system. The main objective of Rogue Legacy is to explore various castles in the hopes of tracking down specific enemies that must be defeated in order to gain access to the final boss. Upon death, the progress you have made will be passed on to your next run, which manages to carry over the several abilities you have learned along the way. This mechanic allows the player to essentially power up their characters over a long period of time and is a fundamental aspect of the game. Gameplay wise, control feels tight and responsive, resulting in an experience that really depends on your skill and individual will to keep on going. If this one passed you by on its release, it would make a worthy addition to your collection. Starting out life on the PlayStation 1, the Oddworld series has continued to iterate over the course of its life, and in all honesty, with New and Tasty, it feels like a real culmination of everything up until that point. New and Tasty is essentially a remake of the first title in the series. You once again take up the role of Abe, with your job being to save the other creatures known as Mudokons, which are scattered across each environment, with up to 300 to collect when compared to the original's 99. The overall experience is a lot larger in comparison, with the game's several endings tying into how many creatures you have saved along the way, which manages to add a nice little touch of replayability. Now, gameplay is pretty unique, with Abe not having that many ways in which to take on enemies directly, but rather through a chant ability, which can allow the player to possess certain enemies and deal with obstacles that way. If you've never got round to playing it back when it was first released, New and Tasty offers up one of the best ways to try the series. Rayman Legends picks up 100 years after the events of the previous title known as Origins. Rayman's adversaries have returned and begun to once again take over the kingdom. You are tasked with taking them on with the help of your friends Clobox and Teensies, as well as a cast of new characters who all possess their own capabilities and help mix up the gameplay when making your way through the journey. It's a pretty big adventure, with up to 120 levels that naturally escalate in difficulty, but it's the additional content that really makes the overall experience shine, from daily and weekly challenges to trophies that can be earned and unlockable levels from the first game to play through as well. There is plenty to keep the player busy and adds to the overall replay value of the game. Although nowhere near as good as the home console versions due to some technical difficulties on the Vita, it is still a respectable platformer and well worth a go if you're looking for something new to play. Spelunky is a 2D platformer that will absolutely test your patience. It is an entirely unforgiving experience and challenges the player to get to grips with the several mechanics in place that stand between you and certain death. If you are to fail, you are sent right back to the beginning, but with each level being randomly generated, it never manages to feel samey or stale, as each new run offers up new possibilities. Taking on the role of a spelunker, you have several tools at your disposal in which to interact with the world, from offensive weapons such as a shotgun or freeze ray to exploration-minded items like the compass or the cape. Getting some of the more powerful or helpful items provides a real rush and can have you suddenly going from fearing everything to feeling unstoppable in a flash. Although the difficulty will have the potential to turn some players away, those that stick with it will find one of the most rewarding platformers to ever grace the PlayStation Vita. Media Molecule's lovable platforming franchise made it to the Vita with nearly every aspect of the experience intact, from the insane customization options and level creator to the jolly multiplayer mode that helps make the Vita release a really respectable entry in the series. Thanks to the unique setup of the hardware, a few new inclusions make the cut as well, mainly tools that take advantage of the touch interface that makes creating all the more intuitive. As with previous titles, you take up the role of Sackboy and make your way through a variety of unique worlds, with the main objective being to simply reach the end and acquire as many stickers as possible. These stickers can be utilized across several of the modes that comprise the experience and allow the player to get really creative. As with past entries, the level creation is the highlight of the game, and if you don't possess the talent to make your own levels, you can hit up the online community and choose from a diverse amount of levels that genuinely offer an endless stream of gameplay. 1001 Spikes is another game that will severely test your patience. It is a side-scrolling platformer that sees the player taking on the role of an Indiana Jones-inspired character in an adventure set across a whole range of diverse levels. As mentioned, the overall difficulty is insane and at times feels downright malicious, but that rewarding feeling of finally making it past an obstacle that has taken up 60 of your 1000 lives is too good to pass up. As you would expect, the general objective of the game is to simply reach the end of each stage and avoid traps, but you need to look out for a key which is located in each stage that unlocks the door at the end and allows you to move on to the next. Visually, it shares much in common with early NES titles, which will surely have the potential to turn some players off, but for those that can look past this aspect of the game, the minute-to-minute gameplay more than makes up for it. Although the sadistic level of challenge will likely crush your soul, if you're looking for a rewarding experience on the Vita, 1001 Spikes will have you covered. Shantae Half Genie Hero brings the classic series back in an all-new adventure. Starting out life on the Game Boy Color in 2002, it once again sees players assuming the role of Shantae, setting out on an adventure that spans a generous amount of levels and locales. As the player, you're afforded a huge array of abilities that help even the odds against the wave of enemies and obstacles that block the way forward, the main one being the ability to transform into a set of different animals by performing specific dances. From a bat, a mouse, to an elephant, there are several available that grant the player new ways in which to interact with the world. The elephant will see you pushing boulders, or the mouse that helps you access smaller areas. Although there is less of an emphasis upon these transformations than in older titles, they still manage to feel relevant and intuitive. If you've been a fan of the series since its inception, this one is a no-brainer. Shovel Knight is a simple game at heart. There's not much in the way of story, just pure platforming and combat, which manages to feel satisfying and rewarding in its own right. You take up the role of a knight. The main goal of the experience is to essentially reach the end of each stage, whilst collecting as much treasure as possible thanks to the shovel you possess. Not only can it be used to acquire treasure, it also serves as the main way in which to take on enemies. Complementing this is a small selection of additional items known as relics that can also be utilized. They grant the player the ability to cast long-range projectiles, or don special gloves that allow you to punch through walls, and even a locket that can make you become invincible. At the end of each level, a boss awaits the player and requires them to figure out their distinct movements and attack patterns in order to overcome them. This aspect is a real highlight of the game and offers up a real amount of challenge that will test players to their limit. If you've yet to sample Shovel Knight or fancy double dipping on the Vita, this would be a great purchase. Coming from the same developers as the Little Big Planet series, Tearaway is a platformer that is entirely built around paper. From the environments to each individual character and animal, a playful nature permeates throughout the entire experience. The main objective of the game is to reach the sun with a message, which ironically represents you, the player. The adventure manages to utilize nearly every aspect of the PlayStation Vita, from the front and back touch panels to the built-in gyroscope, each allowing you to interact with the world in entirely unique ways, such as using your fingers to literally burst into the world by touching the back of the machine, which makes taking out enemies an absolute blast. It's a pretty sizable adventure as well, which is comprised of several worlds in which to overcome. As you would expect, each gradually escalates in difficulty as you progress. Now, Tearaway has to be hands down one of the most eccentric platformers on the system, and well and truly deserves a spot on your shelf. Developed by Queasy Games and released in 2012, Soundshapes marries frantic platforming gameplay with a musical twist. It all revolves around a tiny blob in which the player controls, with their basic task being that of collecting tiny gems that correlate with a note of music. Each time you acquire one, it adds to the background music, which at first starts off quite minimal, but by the end of each level, a unique version of the track will have been created by the player. Now, there are several ways in which you can traverse the environment, from sticking to coloured surfaces, bouncing off enemies to clear danger. It all culminates in a rather relaxing experience that will resonate with music lovers and those looking for something unique. The only downside being that the Vita's speakers are not up to the task, which results in headphones being a good idea when playing the game. Well, that does it for today's video. Make sure to hit subscribe to be notified of videos in the future, and as always, thanks for watching.